So the funny thing is, I mean, the main way of preparing for a radio show is just to think about it. Yes, there's reading and there's documents to look at, press clippings to look over that the research team prepares. But the main thing I do is I think about it. I think about it in the morning if I know what we're doing. Sometimes we get program ideas a little bit later. But on my way to the studio, I think about it. Just get my ideas sorted out. And yep, no chance to do that tonight. I don't think I like this very much. But it's fun too. I mean, it's one of those strange things. It's kind of a blind date, actually. But it's a blind date attended by thousands of people. Normally blind dates, you can make a fool of yourself. There's only one other person there, and you pick somewhere that's fairly dark. But yeah, this is out in the open. Well, let me put it this way. I've thought a lot about people who I hope it isn't. But we won't go there. But I do sort of have a hunch of who it might be. But it is a wild guess. But let's write it down. Because what will happen is if I'm right, and I say, this was my hunch, people say, yeah. Right. Mr. Clever after the event. So we'll put it to the test. I'm going to write my hunch down. We'll put it in a sealed envelope. And when we finish, Oscars time. And the nominees are... Tonight on Today with John Perlman, we'll be talking about I do not have the first idea. I really have no idea, and I've had no idea all day, because tonight on Kaya FM, we have a surprise guest. And I, the presenter, the person who's going to be talking to the surprise guest, have in my little hand a red envelope. It's square. And in big letters it says, surprise guest. So I'm going to open it. It's a bit like presenting at the Oscars. And I'm going to take out a piece of paper, and that will tell me who we're going to be spending the next hour with. And the guest is Johnny Clegg. Well, I should have known who my guest was, because about 5 minutes ago, I heard some sort of stomping sounds. And I thought, no, there couldn't possibly be someone doing a Zulu dance in a cupboard. Why would they put him in a cupboard? Johnny, welcome. How fantastic. I've wanted to interview you for ages, and I'm delighted we've got the hour together. Thanks for joining us here on Kai FM 95.9. Johnny, while the music was playing, Scatterlings of Africa, you said that's an older version.
That's the Juluka version.
Say more about that and how versions changed over time.
Right. The Juluka version was written in a 7/8 format. So there's no snare drum. It's just side stick. And when we re-recorded the song in 1987 with Savuka, we turned it into a regular 2/4 finished, made it simpler, and put in a snare. And we went to number 1 in France, Switzerland, and Belgium, and top 40 in Europe. But both songs, both versions, opened the road for me. So it's my favorite song.
Really?
That's my favorite song. It's not the best song I ever wrote.
Yes. What's that?
I don't know. People will tell me, but they always say, "What's your favorite song?" And I say, "Scatterlings." And they say, "Why?" I say, "Well, because I was 4th year teaching Wits, social anthropology, and some little indie in England picked up Scatterlings at Midem in France, at an independent record licensing deal place, and they released it. And they promoted it, and it got onto the top 40 in England in 1982. So it was a life-changing event for me, because I'd been making music for so long, and I had 4 albums. This was the 4th album.
Yes.
And nothing had happened, in that regard overseas. And it was, it was an incredible time. It was a cultural boycott. It was the political boycott. It was economic. It was academic. It was a full sort of force against anything from South Africa happening. And so when it happened, we all fell out our chairs.
I want to ask you this, because what you've been saying to us, Johnny, raises for me a fascinating question. Do other people have to like your music for you to love it? In other words, does an audience determine for you, a performer, how good a song is?
Performing is about connecting to an audience.
Yes.
if a song, for whatever reason, and no artist will ever be able to determine what connects, otherwise they'd write hits every time.
Yes.
We don't know what connects with an audience. So Scatterlings was a hit in South Africa, and it went platinum at that 83, 84. And I think that for most, I have songs I really enjoy playing.
Yes.
But they basically show fillers for people. So the artist's relationship to their own work is often muddied between their own, I suppose, sense of, I wrote this song and I was clever here and I did this and, and I'd like to play it and share it. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But when you play a song which you never thought would actually do anything, and it's done a lot, we have
quite a nice surprise.
It's a fantastic surprise. So the audience, when you're playing live, I think that we now know what our live songs are and how they operate, and so we build the show around them. We know which songs work. When we want to bring the audience down to a level in the middle of the show, we know what songs to play. So that's really just trial and testing. But when a song is a radio hit, it means that there's something in the song that has connected deeply to the people in some way for some reason, and nobody's actually clear. I mean, there might be a clever melody, whatever it is, but there are lots of clever melodies that never make it to number one or the top 10.
The mystery remains a mystery, and
it's
it always will.
It's a total mystery. It always will as well, because we don't know, and record companies don't know, and they listen. They've listened.
And thank goodness they don't know.
And thank goodness they don't know.
Yes.
And thank goodness artists don't know. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a mystery.
And who would know?
Yeah.
Mkaya, this has been such a kind of headlong rush into interviewing someone I've always wanted to speak to in this way. I forgot to give people the numbers. I forgot to give them all the details for joining the conversation, because I'm certain you want to. A chance to talk to Johnny Clegg and share some of your thoughts about the music he's made, and perhaps the music that other people make, or the music you want to make. It doesn't matter. Call us on 086 0000 959 36959 for your text messages. They cost R1.50. I'm on Facebook. The Today with John Perlman Facebook page. I'm on Twitter, and so is Johnny Clegg. He's at Johnny Clegg Real. You can follow him there, and you can follow me at John Perlman. So 2 Johns for the price of 1, and hopefully 1 + 1 is going to equal much, much more than 2. Johnny, you talk about music being on radio, and I wonder, maybe this was something more in the early days, or maybe it was something you never got tired of, but driving down the road and the guy in the car next to you is playing one of your songs and singing along. In other words, that unplanned interaction with people interacting with your music. A, did that happen? And B, was it special in any way?
Sure. I've been in shopping centres and it's not the shopping centre's radio station. It's like 702 or Kaya FM or whatever it is, playing in the Joburg area, and they playing it, and then I hear one of my songs.
Yes,
and it's very weird. It's a weird feeling, because it's like saying, we know you're here.
Yes,
and suddenly you get a sense of presence and place. And it's a nice feeling. It's a feeling of basically I'm still connected. The music is still being played, and all around me. And people don't see it's me, because I'll be walking through whatever, but I'll listen and I'll feel a little bit anonymous amongst the crowd, and I enjoy that. That's nice. The thing also for me is just going back to Scatterlings. Scatterlings ended my academic career. I was at the university for 12 years, taught for 4 years.
I was there at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was a life-changing song for me personally. People always say to me, this song, Della, that you've written, we used it at our wedding, and it's like the background to our wedding, and it's experience of, it's our life story. Your song is so important to us, and it's weird having a song that does that to you.
Yes,
because this song changed my life. It turned me into a professional musician. I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed being an anthropologist. But I because we had this opportunity, I went to see the head of the department. I said, listen, I will always regret not having given myself a chance. And so the prof said, okay, take a sabbatical. And I never went back.
Yes.
So it's in that sense.
There's probably still a mail from him somewhere waiting.
Yes, yeah. So
please let us know when you're returning.
Yeah. So what we also know as artists, and even sculptors and painters, we know that people connect to a certain arrangement of symmetry, whether it's color, whether it's sound. They relate to it in a way that you can never predict. And so when somebody does that and says, this is the soundtrack to my life, this song, I remember when I first heard this song, and they tell it to you. And it's a very powerful moment.
Yes. Quite intimate.
And quite intimate, but also a little bit overpowering, because it's kind of you responsible for them feeling certain things at a certain time that they remember, and that song is like frozen in their memory for that reason, and that's what the song means, and they want you to acknowledge that. And I say, well, it means that to you, but for other people it might mean something else, because it's hard. Nobody shares the same meaning exactly as another person.
And I would think one of the tricky things about music is that people don't always remember good things as a soundtrack, and it's not you're not the cause of that either. Yeah. Let's go back to Lebogang, who's first caller tonight from Migrant. Hi, Lebogang. You with John Perlman and Johnny Clegg. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm great, thank you. I've got a question to Johnny, and this is purely from his career background as an anthropologist. You know that you study people's behaviors and what is relevant and what isn't. So I'd really like to find out if producing music that is more culturally infused.
I can't hear.
Yeah, that distorted a bit at the end, but I'm just looking at the note that was attached to Lebogang calling in, that we've lost that line. But Lebogang was asking, I think, what from your study of anthropology influenced your music, and perhaps vice versa?
Well, essentially I entered Zulu culture at the age of 14 in Johannesburg, in Yeovil, when I met a Maskanda Zulu street guitarist, and asked him to teach me Maskanda music. And I began immediately to realize that I need to understand the language. I knew no Zulu whatsoever, and I bought a book and I started to teach myself. And so, in a way, I was already being an anthropologist in a sense, in that I was trying to understand culture and try to understand meaning and all that stuff. So when anthropology happened, when I chose anthropology, it was just like a natural continuation of a lot of what I'd been doing before. All anthropology did for me was really give me much more interesting frameworks, models and approaches to understand religion, economics, kinship and marriage, politics, traditional worldviews. It enabled me to talk about it much more fluently and with more understanding. And also anthropology is a comparative discipline, so it's compared to other cultures and other systems, so you get a broader sense of what this particular culture is in terms of others which are similar or dissimilar. So anthropology helped me very much in giving me a certain confidence, just in terms of an intellectual framework, more than anything.
I want to ask you this. You have a son who makes music, Jesse, and I wondered, was it difficult to not say to him, why don't you try this or that? Did you just leave him be and make his own sound?
Yeah, it's both my kids grew up in quite a tough environment. When your father is a national celebrity, and at the time they grew up, I was. We had just sold. We did nearly 5 million albums in Europe over the period of 7 years, just of the Savuka stuff. And the thing for them was, I'll give you an example. Jesse's 7 years old. I take him to a party to one of his buddies at school.
Right.
And I don't know the parents, so I introduced Jesse to the parents. And the lady bends down and says to Jesse, "And what's your name?" And he said, "My name is Jesse Clegg, and I don't speak Zulu."
And he was creating a boundary there?
He was actually, in a way, he was saying that nervously because I think at school and at other places, people just expected him to speak Zulu and dance and do this kind of thing. So my children grew up in a way, I can say, they grew up having to find their own voice, having to shape and define themselves, not against me, but outside of my area of proficiency, really. And so my 20-year-old is just finished the Vancouver Film School diploma. He's busy doing a movie. Jesse's into rock music, so completely different to me. And this happened silently in my home. I never knew this was happening. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but his first hit he wrote when he was 17.
Goodness.
And he said, Dad, I've written a song. I'd just like to make a demo. So I wasn't really, okay, I'll get Vernie to help you out. I got my demo guy to help him. And 2 days later, Vernie phoned me and he said, John, are you a co-writer here? And I said, no. And he said, these are serious songs. I said, really? He said, haven't you heard them? He said, no, he won't play them for me.
Amazing.
So it was kind of done stealthily inside my own home. And when I heard the songs, I fell out my chair and I felt like I didn't know what had been going on, over the past year, because these songs clearly had been worked on, and the melodies and the lyrics and everything had been worked out. So I was stunned. And that's how it unfolded. And Jaron, the same thing. He was sitting on his computer day and night. He did downloaded tutorials on computer generated imaging. I didn't know that. I thought he was playing computer games. And from the age of 14 to the age of 18, he's now a fully fledged CGI master, and has now got a degree in directing. And so they both kind of found their voices outside of my domain.
I want to come back to that and plenty more. Nico throws out his favorite songs, Third World Child, which I feel talks directly about me. Similarly, Universal Men. A lot of other people are wanting to call in. They're wanting to tweet. They're wanting to join our conversation with my no longer surprise guest, Johnny Clegg, who's with us all the way through until 7 o'clock. Before I return to my surprise guest, who is Johnny Clegg, I just have to share with you, because I asked you to guess who my surprise guest might be. And some of your suggestions, Mkaya, Chuck Norris, Donald Trump. We couldn't afford the hairstylist. Guys, where do you think we're going to get these people? Others were a bit more down to earth. Gerry Nel, there was a kind of a whole Oscar vibe going. Oscar Pistorius, Gerry Nel, and Judge Masipa were all candidates. Some people thought the image looked like Ivan Koza, and of course we'd love to have him in the studio, and I'm sure we will have him at some point. Chuck Norris. Guys, no, we do not have Chuck Norris in the studio. And Samuel Jackson, which perhaps was more plausible given that he has worked in this country. But Johnny Clegg is with us, and I'm certain you want to talk music, you want to talk other things. Mujalifa has music very much on his mind and is calling from Vereniging. Hi, Mujalifa.
Hi, how are you doing, John?
Good, and yourself?
Thank you very much. I think your surprise guest is just perfect, really. I mean, Chuck Norris would have been great, but I am so excited.
He wouldn't have let me speak, Chuck Norris. I'd have been quite scared to interrupt him.
I can imagine that.
Go ahead.
Mr. Clegg, are you well, sir?
I'm well, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor. Listen, I'm a musician, and I believe I am. By profession, I'm something else. But my effort as a musician has done very well. In fact, to a level where I was actually a professional musician. I was with a band called Njapedi, and we were able to even release an album that sold 5,000 copies. And
well done.
To a point of being nominated for an award.
Excellent.
One of these radio stations have got awards, and we were nominated there.
Yes.
Which was very prestigious for us, and we did very well and managed to get a lot of following. And then we disbanded and so on. I'm following a solo career, and the reason I love you so much and I can resonate with what you do is interesting in the sense that you create your music in a mix of English, but you use native
Yes.
How can I say? Let me say native languages. You understand? We used to write our music in Japedi in Sesotho. I write music in Sesotho currently, but I have changed from what we used to do. We were a live band where we were doing traditional music. In fact, they even used to call us children of Sankomota.
Okay, so Mujalifa, I've got some other callers waiting to come on as well. Do you want to either wrap with a question, maybe?
That, John.
Yeah.
Let me get to it. You know what my thing is that how do you? I mean, the idea of believing that cultural music and using native languages would be a commercial thing.
No, I never. It was never.
Mujalifa, thanks, Johnny.
Thank you. That's a good question. I started at the age of 14 playing maskanda, and so for 2 years, 1968 to 1970, I played under the tutorship of Charlie Mzila from Msinga Emabomvini, and then I met Sipho Mqunu, who became later my partner in Juluka, and Sipho and myself played pure traditional maskanda music for about 7 years together. We were going as Johnny and Sipho, but it was very hard because we were black and white, and there was a cultural segregation laws and all of that stuff. So we played in private venues, in churches, we played in schools, we played in many embassies, and places where we could get some exposure. But
I saw you at the Institute of Race Relations, just to cut in. I think sometime it's 72, 73.
That's right, exactly.
Crowd of 100 people maybe.
So we were just happy to play the music. We were not looking to make money, or we were celebrating the music for the music's sake. And then as I became more proficient in the actual songwriting and the style and the technique of songwriting, I realized that there was many similarities between maskanda music and some Celtic folk music, which is traditional music from Ireland, Scotland, England, played on traditional instruments. And so I started to experiment, and then I said to Sipho, how would it be if we have a Zulu chorus but an English verse? But the English verse, if you listen to the English verse, you kind of get what the chorus is going to be, because the verse is setting up something to do with this thing that I'm singing about. And he was quite open. He said, yeah, let's try. And so we did. And that became the first Juluka album, and it was about 1977 that we experimented with this. I was a student. I was becoming a university lecturer. I was very much involved in an academic career, but I was still doing music, and I was still dancing in the hostels, and I was very engaged in the Zulu migrant labor community in Johannesburg. On the weekends, I was at Jeppe Hostel, George Koch, Denver, all that stuff. So this idea of crossover, which is what I call it, which is crossing over, getting a conversation going between different musical traditions and different languages, because language creates melody. If you compare English to Zulu or English to Sotho or Zulu to Sotho, Zulu is very strictly a consonant vowel. Mm-hmm. You never say with a dog. You never say na inja. The A and the I coalesce to form E. You say nanja. So you've always got. And the thing that really, really, really still to this day makes me amazed is Zulu war cries, izaka. When they chant those chants, the rhythm and the intensity and the way it's constructed is very powerful, and there's nothing I can really think of to compare it with. Kulepe hasiloto impevukazi yethu eyaseluthukela kwakuphi kuyisigaba okuthukela ukhukhu akaphukusha inkunzi yalwa wethu akaphukusha inkunzi yalwa wethu akaphukusha inkunzi. So there's a rhythm, and they beat on their sticks or on their shields, and that the use of the vowels, the choice of the words when you make up the war cry is also very important. There's a lot of thought that goes into that. It's not just telling a story. And all of those rules of composition,
yes,
which come out of speaking the language, you get to grips with if you immerse yourself into it. So I was interested to see between English and Zulu, how that would work.
What you could do with it.
And some of them were stillborn. Some of them didn't work, but there's some songs that worked very, very well.
Can I ask you, I mean, in general, as a musician, as a composer, as someone working in partnerships like the one you had with Sipho Mtunu, do you know when a song works? Is there a moment when you go, whoa, okay, that's it? And do you both, if you're co-composing, do you both have to know it?
The one will recognize it maybe before the other.
Yes.
And Sipho was very animated when he thought a line worked.
Yes.
He said, don't leave this out. This is the one I think is,
Did you disagree while you were working?
No, I think also because we both knew that this was new. Yes. Nobody knew what was right or what was wrong.
Yes.
You're making something up that's completely new. There's no tradition to draw on. You're making it up as you go. So the songs were all different. We had a formula which was just basically English verse, Zulu chorus, some songs entirely in Zulu, other songs entirely in English but with humming, Baka humming from the southern tribes, the Nguni around Matatiela and the Eastern Cape. They're the guys that we took the humming style from and made that famous on our records. That style, and there's a dance that goes with that. So all of those things, we took everything we could and fitted it in. And it was just like playing with a jigsaw puzzle. And sometimes you had to cut your own jigsaw to make it fit. And it was a very, very powerful, creative and developmental time. And we didn't have commercial pressure. Sipho was a gardener, I was a student, and then I was a lecturer. So we enjoyed radio play and getting shows and that. And when the Juluka album came out, we only sold 4,000 units then. And it was considered to be a flop of note for the budget that had been given by Hilton Rosenthal, who became our champion. He became the publisher.
What did he say about those numbers? Did he say, "Never mind, I'm still behind you. Let's go"?
Not only did he say, I'm behind you. I'm leaving the record company to start a new company based on this flop because I believe that there's something happening here. So he was a far-sighted chap, and signed us up for like 5 years.
Yes, fascinating. I want to give the people on the lines a chance. Tsebo wants to chat from Ruriput. Hi, Tsebo.
Hi, John. Hi. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes. Hi, John.
Hey, hi.
Johnny Clegg.
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, firstly, I just want to say, the song Impi still has got that rhythm.
Yes.
And when you sign off on this show, please play just a bit. Ask John to play that part.
Okay.
And another thing is that I lost my jersey because of you, Johnny Clegg. In 1981,
you owe my jersey.
You were performing at the Jabulana Amphitheater.
Yes.
And a friend of mine, Ruben, we just, you just blew us. Really. And I want to know, why did you call yourself Juluka?
Okay, so Juluka.
Can we quickly ask you that? What color was the jersey, Tsebo?
It had red, white, and whatever color.
Okay, we'll check. It's maybe still at lost property. So you lost a jersey, and Johnny owes you a jersey, but he owes you an explanation as well. Why did you call it Juluka? Thanks, Tsebo. Juluka, Johnny.
Okay, Juluka means sweat. Juluka was the name of Sipho's bull.
Okay.
Juluka bemphetha abafazi namadoda. So, which means the people who are in charge of this bull, they can't control him, it's basically saying that the bull is going to go its own way, and I like the idea of a bull that cannot be harnessed, because basically what we were creating was a new music, and we were pushing. Look, we had our records banned on the air. Was a Friday was banned. Any mixing of English and Zulu on the same song was considered to be diluting the Zulu culture. This SABC at that time had all these cultural arguments.
Right.
So we could only really get our music out by playing it live. And that was hard enough as well, because we couldn't play as a white and a black in a public space.
Yes.
But we found ways around that. And I'm busy with my autobiography at the moment.
Oh, fantastic. Timeline on that?
Next year the draft will be finished.
Good luck to the editor. You've got a lot to talk about.
So that's Juluka.
I wanted to ask you this. I mean, your songs have had a hugely uplifting quality, but they've also been about some deeply painful things. I actually quoted one of your lines the other day. We were talking about the culture of migrant labor, and there was a line in a song that you wrote that I thought was very powerful. The little ones grow older on the station platform. And I wonder, do you listen to some of those songs and find that they evoke not always happy memories, not always images of crowds, but actually the subject matter and maybe the particular times in your life? There must be some hard stuff in your music too.
You see, my influence is layered.
Yes.
I was influenced by dance as well, and by particularly shaman. Now, when we sing and we dance, we have what we call izintlamvu. Izintlamvu are small, short songs which depict a life experience, and we sing backwards and forwards, and we tell stories through these songs, and they are really about the experience of the migrant worker. Ngishele intombi enjani ehamba nesoka ngizoyenzani namashe ndiqome izolo mama ngishele intombi enjani ehamba nesoka ngizoyenzani namashe ndiqome izolo. Then I say sengiyahamba ngiyele kwazulu emsilikwane haya belungu basitshele ndila ibona, which means I'm leaving. We're going to Msilikwane, in near Escourt, which is a township. We are leaving the farms. The white people will no longer tell us to dry. Ukubambidilai means that you work for 6 months for free as a labor tenant, and then for 6 months you go off to do what you want to do. And each man and wife, if they had their kids would also fall into the intilai. So there's a little intlamvu which says we've given up this life of being forced to give 6 months of our labor just to be tenants on the farm, and we're now living in Msilikwane. So all of these, the ability to take 3 melodies, da 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 da, and then put in each one a point in tlamvu. So that is a very creative ability, and we call those people amakaku. Ikaku is a great composer, like Mshengu Shabalala from Ladysmith Black Mambazo. Ikaku leli. So I learned all those ideas and techniques, and the growing older on the station platform, isikukele platform sivaleli sobaba baye makoli sisabona ngonyaka ozayo. So all of those came out of songs that I'd heard, and ideas about the migrant labor experience, and then I translated them into English and into a melody that would work with the with the song. So this, together with umzansi, the other style of dance, and intlangwini, because I learned 3 different styles of dance. I loved the dancing, but it was always the singing that went with it, which spoke deeply about all the contradictions and paradoxes of being a migrant worker. So the first album is called Universal Men.
Yes.
The title of which came from John Berger's book,
Ways of Seeing.
Was it Ways of Seeing? I can't do it. It's one of those. And he talks about the migrant worker as a universal man.
36959 for your text messages. KB sends this. This takes me back to my childhood days in Swaziland and Durban. My grandpa used to make us dance to Juluka and Johnny's music. He called me Johnny Clegg's Makoti. KB with those memories. Let's go to the lines. A lot of you have been holding on. Sorry for the wait. Bongani in Protea. Hi, Bongani.
Hello, John. How are you?
Yes, good, John. You, Bongani, you.
I would like to greet Johnny as well.
Yeah, boy,
Johnny,
yeah, boy. How's it?
All right, Johnny. I feel so honored to have a chat with you. I find you being one of the most extraordinary people in this country.
Oh, thank you, man.
You came from England to South Africa and you learned this language. By the way, I'm a Zulu speaking person.
Oh.
So I find it very, peculiar that a person from England can come and speak this language the way you speak it. That we are proud of.
Thank you, man.
The words that you use as well are words that, I last heard them about 85 years ago.
Thank you.
Bongani, thank you. Mike is also joining us from the southern part of Joburg, from Lens. Hi, Mike.
How are you, John?
Fine, and you?
Yeah, I would like to speak to Mr. Clegg.
Yes,
go
hi,
ahead.
how's it?
I'm okay, Mr. Clegg. I would like to ask you, how difficult is it to learn an African language? Because I had that University of KwaZulu-Natal want to make first-year students to learn an African language compulsory. How difficult is it to learn an African language? Because especially Zulu, with all its grammar and rules.
Yes,
Mike, thanks.
The grammar and the rules are very, very difficult. I actually wrote Zulu B grade for matric as a 7th subject, and it was tough. It was tough because let me say something about learning Zulu. I think any African language, it's a spoken language. It's a spoken tradition. The way you pronounce, the way you inflect words is very important. I think that in terms of teaching an African language, I learned it through music. I sang songs. Sometimes I didn't know what I was singing, but I learned it pitch perfect, and I learned to pronunciate, but I didn't know what I was singing in the beginning.
Yes.
And I bought dictionaries and I tried to find it, and that's how I got into it. So I had a passion for it because I loved the music. So I think that was a very important part of me wanting to learn the language, was having been introduced to the language through music. However, later on, listening to discussions and men sitting around in the hostels talking about home and making jokes and enjoying the fullness of the description of certain things in Zulu as opposed to another language. That I found also was very, very encouraging, because I also wanted to be able to talk and to tell a story like that. They were great storytellers. The language was used in such a way that the language contained in it so many clever references and funny anecdotes that was also stimulating. It's very hard to learn a language when you're saying, it's got 15 classes of nouns.
Yes.
And you've got,
where it's purely technical.
It's technical, yeah. And I think most universities get bogged down in that.
I want to go back to Johnny Clegg, the young teenage boy, and wonder why you were doing all of this. Because at 14, 15, you could have been going to have a milkshake in a place where you knew there were cute girls, or practicing your cricket shots or whatever. Were you a different kind of teenager, or do you think this was going to happen anyway?
Yeah, I was a very different kind of teenager. I left England when I was 6 months old.
Okay.
My mother was born in Zimbabwe, so I grew up on a farm until I was 7.
Okay.
She divorced my dad. I never knew my father till I was 21. But then she married a crime reporter from Johannesburg, Mr. Dan Pino, and he was my stepfather. And I was taken into the townships when I was 8 and 9 and 10. And I knew there was another world out there. All my other white friends at the white schools, they had no experience of that. It was just a word, the townships, they'd never been in. And my dad would go in and do stories, and he'd take me in. Also, he loved Kwela music. He had a Kwela music collection, which he would play on Sundays. And also, he was teaching in Alexandra Township. He was teaching a bugle band,
right?
Which was led by a father Ramatata. who wanted to create this bugle band and get these kids. So my stepfather was a drummer. So what he would do is he would go to the classroom, and then they would put these tubes, tire tubes, over the desk so that they would bounce on the sticks, and he would teach them how to roll, and all the different paradiddles and all the stuff. And I would sit there quite shyly.
Yes.
And the thing that really I found amazing as a youngster, when you're 10 and you're in a township, you see the other children running around laughing and playing, and they were poor, but they were alive. They had life energy, and inkani empilo, the energy of life was so pronounced that it was infectious for me. I really wanted to join them. Then I went to Zambia. So I went to 6 different schools in 5 years in 3 different countries.
Goodness.
In my primary school period.
Yeah. And
when I was in Zambia in the early 60s, I went to a non-racial school. So I was, Kaunda was the president, and it was a democratic and non-racial country. So I had a year and a half schooling in a non-racial school. So when I came back to South Africa, it was a complete crazy time for me to readjust to a whites only school, and to people with very narrow ideas about everything, and so I became marginalized in that regard. And when I heard the guitar being played, and I was 14, and it was at night time in Yeoville, I went to get bread and milk at the store, and this guy was standing outside playing. I saw the guitar was tuned differently, and I saw that the picking style was completely unique, because I had been learning classical guitar. And, my mother was a jazz singer, so I came from a journalist, musician background, which created a much more open, I suppose, worldview. But also my own experiences, up until the age of 11, I'd been all over the place. I felt like a migrant. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And when I heard this guitar being played, I worked out. It was a flash of a moment. It was a magical moment.
This is where you're going.
This instrument has been Africanized.
Amazing.
This instrument is creating a version of guitar music which is like the blues. It's the South African blues. And nobody knows about it. And I want to play it. I want to learn it.
I want to stay on that, but I'm looking at the clock, and the clock is not our friend. 2 more calls. Simpiwe is calling from Glenanda. Hi, Simpiwe.
Hi, John and Johnny. Just a comment and a question. Firstly, my comment is thanks to Johnny for promoting the African music. I think himself, Podloza Nzimande, Inkunze Mdaka, and Begumuzi Lutuli. I actually grew up in Ladysmith, and I actually danced and sang Ushaneni and all other dances. Yeah. But just a question from my side is, I saw a picture of you and the great Chris McGregor of the Brunos, who worked with Ututu Pukwan and Johnny Gianni. What type of friendship did you have with them? Did you ever get to play with them?
Okay, thanks, Johnny. If you can answer.
No, never got to play with them, but I hung out with them, and I met him and his wife before he died in Paris, and she actually turned me on to a book by Fritjof Capra on ecology and on saving the planet. It was a green book, and they were both very into this idea. But that was very that was about, I must say, that's like 20 years ago, really, a long time ago.
Johnny, you've been a musician, a lecturer, you've been part of people's lives, but you're also, and a dad, you spoke about that, but you're also an ordinary guy who's been people's friends. And our next and last caller wants to talk about Johnny Clegg, the friend. Sergio, hi.
Hey, John.
Hey, Serge.
How you doing, my brother? John, Mr. Perlman, your producer said that I should share something that the public don't really know about Johnny.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, the Johnny that you have sitting across the table from you, the Johnny that the public see on stage, is exactly the same Johnny that we see backstage. There is only one Johnny. He's really a genuine man. He is a great entertainer. He, at the age of 62, he's a man with a thirst for knowledge that not many 20-year-olds have. So if you're looking for intellectual exchange, you can do worse than sitting across the table from Johnny Clegg. The man, he's an informed man, he's an entertainer, and then he'll invite you to his house for tea, and he'll cater enough to solve the hunger problem in the third world.
Okay. Sergio, thanks. I'd love to hear more from you, but we're into the last minute. Johnny, I end interviews like this by offering my guests 3 wishes, which I have absolutely no power to deliver on, so it's a check that's not bankable, but here we go. What's your wish for our country?
I read recently a very dark book by R.W. Johnson,
yes.
and all the things that are figured in the book there, which are reasonably accurate. I think for me, I've always been a supporter of education. I wish that we could create, first of all, an education system that would enable the vast majority of South Africans to be exposed to the wonders of learning. And teaching is not actually imparting knowledge. It's teaching people how to learn, to teach themselves. So once you get it, once you get the idea of learning how to learn, which is what teaching is about, really, that is a gift that you give somebody. And so that's the one thing.
Can I move on to the next 2, just because of time? What do you wish for your family and those close to you?
I wish for them to have. I wish for my kids to have a great adventure. I think that for young men, the world is crazy at the moment. What's going on all over, but I wish for them a great adventure, a great defining set of circumstances that enable them to discover who they are.
And finally, what do you wish for yourself?
I wish for myself that wonderful moment of connection with my audiences, because I live for that. That is my my nourishment. To be able to still bring those songs back to life and for people to enjoy them, and I'm battling to make new ones, but we've got a whole repertoire that we do, and so yes, it's really to continue to be a performer and to share with an audience that there's those magical moments.
What I wish for is that we had another hour, but we don't. Johnny Clegg, my no longer mystery guest, but delighted to have spent the hour with you. Many, many thanks. Let's do this again.
I'd love to. Thanks so much. Thanks, Kaya.
Sure. So that was completely amazing. I've long wanted to do an interview with Johnny Clegg for a whole range of reasons. I mean, he's an incredibly interesting man. He's a great South African. But I'm just realizing now afterwards that in a way I feel quite emotional about it, because his music, particularly the music he made with Sipho in the Juluka years, really was a soundtrack to a very important part of my life, basically from the age of 20 through to my late 20s. Becoming an adult, finding my own place to live, stepping out into the world, and being involved in a South Africa that really was in many ways a very brutal and ugly place, but there was a joyousness to their music that suggested we as a country could become better, something much better. And we didn't really get a chance to talk about that. I mean, I wanted to talk about my own feelings about his music, but obviously there was so much else to talk about. 1 hour was nowhere near enough. We'll get him back, by the way. He's writing a book, and he was saying afterwards he's doing some other interesting things that we might want to bring him back to KFM, maybe not necessarily to my show, but certainly to 95.9, and make sure we capture that again. But wow, that was fantastic. As I said, there were some people I was hoping would not be my mystery guests, and none of them turned up. But someone I admire, someone whose music has been part of my life, was my guest for what felt like all too short an hour. And it was a surprise, and a wonderful one at that. So before the show, I wrote down and put on my envelope, into an envelope, who I thought my mystery guest might be. And it got stapled shut. We like working, I don't think they have this much security at the Oscars or the South African Music Awards. I thought my guest might be Shakes Mashaba. And I hope one day Shakes Mashaba is my guest, because and it's interesting, both have feet involved. A big part of my upbringing was football, and particularly as a young man growing up in white suburbs, going to watch football matches at Orlando Stadium, where a guy like Shakes Mashaba was a king. And he's a king now in charge of our national team. So whoever's watching this, my producer, Nebakazi Manzi, let's get Shakes Mashaba in as well. But, he would have been a wonderful guest as well, and he will be, because at Kaya we get that kind of thing done. But Johnny Clegg, it was fabulous.